Good afternoon or evening or morning, depending on when you're watching this, everyone. It is a pleasure, a really big pleasure for me to be doing this conversation today. So, Chris Miller with the National Coalition for Community Capital, talking with one of the other founding board members of NC3. And really, for my money, Michael is the OG for this moment. He's the first guy. Michael was standing out in cornfields talking about this when there was no one even listening. And he's spoken all over the world and every state, almost every state, and written a lot of great stuff as well. So it is such a pleasure, Michael, to welcome you. Michael Shuman, author, attorney, um, economic genius, insightful guy, totally passionate about your work. Welcome to our community capital conversation.
Well, nice to be with you. And the one credential that I'll add, because it'll be of interest, is that every week I publish this affiliate of NC3 called the Main Street Journal,
Yep.
which contains news, jobs, commentary, interviews, all related to local investments. And it's free too, if you want to get it.
It
So
is, yeah,
well,
yeah.
it's just Substack publication. But it's the other thing that we put in there, I'll just flag, is that every other week we put in a listing of fresh local investment opportunities. So given the number there are out there, we don't organize them by community, but rather by region. And we also have local investment funds that you can invest in. So it has practical use as well. What I'm finding myself writing more and more about is a shift in the global economy and the relative opening that that brings to us in the local investment field. I mean, right now it feels like chaos and panic as people look at their 401ks and their pension funds, and they're down maybe 15% from where they were 3, 4 months ago. But I think, what we're seeing is that people are nervous about the stock market. They are nervous how the tariff wars we're facing are affecting the US Treasury bond market. Where else are they going to put their money? Well, guess what? We've got some alternatives for you. And those alternatives are in your own backyard. In fact, they may even be in your own house. And so I feel like there is a case here for us to make that's very timely.
Yeah, and I certainly would concur with that. I think one of the really interesting things that's happened to us, we've been on the ground now really since 2021, and I appreciate your reference to the Main Street Journal and providing an opportunity for actual action on that, because that's really what we started off, as really working on the education side and a little bit of policy work. But a couple of years ago, well, coming up on 4 years ago now, decided we would get on the ground and we would work in communities. And so there has not been a shortage of communities interested in that. There have been a shortage of communities and organizations saying, yeah, we want to take the next step and build a community investment fund in this case, which is NC3's focus, is really the community investment fund world. But what has happened in the last several months is a lot of people have come to us and said, we think we need to, not we want to, we think we need to put together a community investment fund because this regular source of income that we would get in our community now looks questionable. Whether it's going to come at all, what it's going to look like, what might be attached to it, et cetera. And I mean, it was never a great paradigm, right? Not a good idea to depend on grant money or gift money coming in if there's a way around it. So we really see it as an opportunity to push forward on the work we've been doing and to build a lot more community investment funds across the country.
Yeah, and let me give you another indicator of, I think, the pulse of this. Uh, so in the month of February, another old NC3 person, Janice Shade, and we both are professors at Bard's Green MBA program. So we taught a 1 month mini course for students there on how to create a community investment fund. And there were, I don't know, so it's a small program, but about a quarter of the school was interested in taking this class. So interest
Wow.
in the implementation side.
Yeah.
And then in the Main Street Journal, I put in a little squib at the top and said, I'm teaching this class. If you have a inchoate interest in putting together some kind of community investment fund and want a student to work with you for a month, uh, let's do it. I got 20 responses in
Wow.
48 hours,
Wow.
more than we could assign this particular semester. So, yeah, I've never seen the interest as high as it is now.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I think what's particularly exciting about that is the student part of it. You know, as you know, we've had students regularly through the course of NC3's life working with us. We were just talking about this earlier today about interns that have applied to come to us and their passion on this. But I just love the idea of 20 somethings who are really bright and really want to make a difference in the world and are coming to our work and saying, that's how I want to make a difference in the world.
So here's a little story I tell my business students, which is 1998, the Canadian province of Nova Scotia legalized what they call C. diffs, which I won't go through what the acronym is, but it basically is neighborhood pension funds. And if you put money into these neighborhood pension funds, you get a pretty healthy tax break. So lots of Nova Scotians have participated. There are 70 of these funds. If the United States had as many per capita, we would have about 22,000 of these funds. Now, I argue that every community in the United States, of which there, if you count every town and city and so forth, you get to about 36,000. So it's not, it's not out of the league of Nova Scotia, but what we see as the penetration of these C. diffs in Nova Scotia could be done in the United States to bring a local investment fund to many more communities. And it just becomes an additional tool for economic development, for affordable housing, for renewable energy. Just to pull another example of this, so I just started to work for the city of Irvine, which has 350,000 people in California, and the mayor there wants to put solar on every roof, business and house in the community, and basically unplug the city from the local utility, which I think is a marvelous idea. It's good for the economy, not good for the utility, but they need to adapt. It's understood that in order to do this, they're going to need to bring in additional capital, more than the city can provide in capital. And that's where local investors can come in. And there's just a huge rate of return that investors get from solar. I did a talk yesterday with a bunch of local business network leaders, and I showed them a slide of the rate of return that I've gotten from putting solar on my roof. Okay. And I'll just, mention the highlights of it. So it was $22,000 investment at the top, which I took, by the way, from my solo 401k self-directed pension fund. And now I pay myself back over 5 years rather than paying the utility. So we're completely unplugged from the utility.
Wow.
And with that investment, we're we pay the whole thing off in 3.5 years. And by year 5, we're at a double-digit rate of return. By year 10, we're at 22% rate of return per year. So there are lots of other kinds of investments that we can make that if we're clever about this, pay off enormously. And I appreciate, and this is another trend in the movement, that local investment of the kind that I'm talking about takes a lot of time and effort. And this is really the big argument for funds, because with a fund, in theory, you're getting a professional manager who will select and diversify and manage and create liquidity in this thing you're investing in, which you cannot do on your own. And so, my hope is that if Irvine makes it easy for the residents of Southern California to invest in a fund, get a good rate of return, and solarize the whole damn city, we could do this all across the country.
We need those kind of pilots. I think that's one of the things, as we work to shift this entire paradigm of how projects happen in our communities, how businesses get started in our communities, who's making those decisions. Right now, most of those decisions are being made externally to our communities, right? It's people in other places sitting down at a desk looking at a spreadsheet and say, how little can we put in here and how much can we take out? So changing that paradigm is huge, and getting great examples and pilots like that are really cool. One of the other, it was you, Michael, that made me aware of what was happening in Nova Scotia, and there's a great white paper that was produced out of that that showed what happened in 2019, and there's a couple of wonderful statistics in that. But I think the most powerful one, because I was an on-the-ground economic developer, was the efficacy of community investment in creating jobs. And Michael, as you know, lots of times economic development organizations throw tens of thousands of dollars and more at a single job creation. And Nova Scotia in 2019 cost them under $600 for every job they created. And they created about 1,200 jobs in that year at new and expanding businesses. And so for those of you who love the entrepreneurial side, you've got to really love what's possible there. For those of you that need housing, you've got to love what's possible. For those of you that need solar, you've got to love what's possible here. So, parting words of wisdom, Michael, from you to the group.
So the only other parting word I would give is a kind of big light bulb went off in my head this past year. And that is that if you want to, that as a local investor, you want two kinds of returns. You want a private return to yourself, and then you want a social return for your community. So if I invest in a local fund that's supporting affordable housing, that's maybe it'll pay me 3 or 4%. That's a small private return. But what it pays me in a social return is maybe a reduction in a homeless problem in my city with all the attendant other issues of crime and public health. Maybe it convinces more people to live closer to their jobs because they can afford the housing to do that, which brings down the carbon footprint of the city. Maybe it creates more jobs by expanding the construction industry and other taxpayers in the city. So all of these things are part of this robust social return. The light bulb that went off for me this year is that social return is always greatest if you invest in the most distressed parts of your community. So we tend to think about the best investments are being in the best and brightest, who are the Steve Jobs of the future. And yeah, that's great. Find those people in your community. But guess what? Putting a grocery store into a community that's a food desert has a great rate of return and a huge social return. So I think getting us to think more holistically about what our portfolio of local investments should be, that's the big next challenge.
Terrific. All right. Well, on that, thank you again for being with us. Thanks to our audience members, and we'll see you next time.